Well, welcome everybody to the Little Athletics New South Wales Sunday Coaching School. My name is Darren Wenzer. I'm the Head of Coach and Volunteer Development with Little Athletics New South Wales. It is fantastic to have Matt Rawlings as our guest today. Now, Matt was named the 2019-2020 Athletics New South Wales International Para Coach of the Year. Now, this was following a tremendous season where he placed athletes in a number of international teams. Now, one of these was sprinter Tamsin Colley, who at only 17 years of age competed at her second senior global meet, where she made the final of the T36 200 metres at the World Para Athletics Championships in Dubai. Now, Matt also coached 6 athletes to the 2019 Innis Global Games held in Brisbane in October. Now, Innis events are for para-athletes with an intellectual disability. Now, Matt also is the Athletics New South Wales Target Talent Program Para-Athletics Coach. So welcome, Matt. It is fantastic to have you with us.
Oh, thank you, Darren, for the opportunity, and it's well received my end. Looking forward to having a chat.
No, absolutely fantastic. Now, just then, Matt, during the introduction, I mentioned about one of your athletes, Tamsin,
Yes.
competing with a T36 classification. Can you explain to us a little bit more about what that classification is, the T36?
So each athlete with a disability gets classified depending on their specific disability or their impairment. So T36 is it includes people that have like coordination impairments such as hypertonia and ataxia. So this includes people with cerebral palsy, and that's the category that Tamsin fits into.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that definition there. Now, Matt, we always like to know where we're growing our coaches from and where our coaches are coming from. So I've got to ask you, or a question that I always ask up front to all of our guests that we have on Sunday Coaching School is, Matt, where did you grow up, and what was your involvement with sport in the early years when you were a kid?
So I grew up in Langley, which is in New South Wales. So for those that aren't too aware of where Langley is, it's I guess I usually say somewhere in between Castle Hill and Blacktown. So it's in between. I try to pick the suburbs that people are a little bit more familiar with, but so Langley sort of in the middle of those two as well. So Mum and Dad. They bought the 4th house ever there in Langley, and they're still there thus far. And I remember there was a lot of farm life and everything when I was growing up as a kid. And there was a goat that came and visited us, one day as we were getting home from wherever we'll be as a young child. That's all now all far gone, and there's multiple houses there. But pretty much grew up in Langley. Memories are sort of, playing sport, which I started as a young age at Prospect Little Athletics. So in the tiny tots there, and I was at Prospect Little A's until under 12s, and then I moved to Hills District, looking for a bigger club with and that's where one of the coaches that I was working with was coaching out of. So I sort of just gravitated over to the Hills Athletics Club as of under 12s, and haven't really left since. Now I'm fortunate enough to be the senior club coaching coordinator as well there. So so grew up Langley, and had stints at Prospect Little Athletics and Hills Little Athletics. As a youngster, I played multiple sports. It wasn't just athletics; it was team sports such as AFL. I went to high school at Oak Hill College at Castle Hill and played rugby league and rugby union. Had a little bit of pace back in the day, so primarily played on the wing. So that was pretty much my early involvement into sports. I first got involved into coaching when I was year 10 at high school, just to try to help some of the junior athletes that were that were coming through the system. And yourself, actually, Darren, was the facilitator of that coaching course that day. And I think it was the level O. I think, I'm not too sure whether that's around anymore, but it was the orientation to coaching. So that's sort of where it sort of sparked my first little bit of interest into coaching. So it sort of goes back to 5, where I first started in the sport.
And when you're a competitor yourself, Matt, did you have any favourite track and field events, or did you shine at any of them?
I quite enjoyed the 100 and the 400. I thought I was quite handy in those. I had PBs of 10.7 in the 100 and 47.7 in the 400. So I was very close to obtaining a scholarship to America to pursue my career there. But unfortunately, I was involved in a fairly serious motor vehicle accident. I was involved in a hit and run as I was walking across the streets, and the car went through a red light and went a little bit of body surfing, and was left on the side of the road, and did quite a bit of damage to my quite a bit of nerve damage to my knee. So as a result, I've got I call it a little bit of half of Bunnings in my leg holding me together with some plates and screws. So David Tarbottom from who everybody's familiar with was somebody that really helped me make that transition from athlete into coach as well. So he was a big facilitator, and he was one big to try to help me with some comebacks, but unfortunately they failed, and I went and played a little bit of rugby league when I couldn't compete at that high level after going into a little bit of a mental health sort of demon. And unfortunately, I suffered a tibial plateau fracture. So that's a broken leg and a shattered right knee. So my knee was in 53 pieces. So it's leaving me now with an artificial bone, a metal plate, and 5 screws in my leg. So so I got a little bit of damage in there, but that's life.
And Matt, did you move? Your first experiences coaching, what were they? What do you remember about those when you first started?
It was a little. I was in a really bad mental health state at the time, and as I mentioned before, David Tarbottom and the Hills Athletics Club, there, Steve Whelan, who now is the president of the club. They were 2 big facilitators in me making hopefully, I'll let other people decide, a successful coaching transition. So my coach, Malcolm Lavender, he was moving rural because his wife was for work reasons. So they needed to pretty much plug a gap of coaching. So there was a lot of those athletes that I was training with that were still, active athletes, even though I was, in a little bit of a bad space. So they just asked if I could just come down and sort of just take the reins in it, even just in a temporary basis. And they continued to go quite well. And then really, I think it was a 14-year-old athlete, or 13 at the time, para athlete Stephanie Schweitzer, sort of just presented, and being the new kid on the block. Going back many years ago now, there wasn't really, para athletes. There was no real inclusion or anything like that. So I was sort of just handball to her as the new kid on the block. And within 12 months, she'd made Australian teams, and as a 14-year-old was making finals. And from there, a lot more para athletes started joining the group due to her success at that first international experience.
And am I right in saying, Matt, do you still coach Stephanie?
Yeah, Stephanie's still an active athlete. So so she was one of the athletes that was fortunate enough to coach at the INSA games. So she's getting towards the latter part of her career. So she's 28 now. So she's been competing at an international level since she was 14. So she's I'm not too sure how many world championships she's gone to. She's gone to quite a few, and she went to the London Paralympic Games in long jump, where she finished 4th there as well. So she's had a very successful career, and her success has sort of been her success has really helped me with getting more para athletes and helping with inclusion and putting back into the sport primarily through para sports.
And you mentioned a few major events. Do you get to go to those major events with your athletes, Matt?
I've been fortunate enough to go along with quite a few through INAS. I didn't go to Rio with Tamsin. She was a last minute sort of inclusion with a few of the Russians being kicked out. But I was fortunate enough to be in the front row for London when Stephanie was competing in the long jump, and that's a wonderful experience that I'll never forget. 80,000 people packed in there on, all looking at your athlete, and she did 5 out of 6 fouls in the long jump that day, but was still able to get one jump to finish 4th. So it was it was a wonderful experience. So I have been fortunate enough to be involved in quite a few international and state teams. So yes.
I was actually going to ask you, Matt, I don't know whether you've already outlined them, but I was going to say, what are some of your favourite coaching moments or achievements? I mean, is it the major events, or is it something else? What would you say there if you had to pick out, some of your favourite moments?
Oh, I think just watching the athletes succeed, and whether that's just a personal best or them just achieving like a goal that they've been working so hard about, and it could just be an athlete that has balance and coordination issues and wanted to be able to start a race out of starting blocks, and due to many challenges or barriers that they've had due to their varying disability, could have taken them 2 or 3 years to be able to achieve that goal. So it's not necessarily the Olympic Games or World Championship medals. Of course they are wonderful, but there's some other moments as well. So there's many, as I said, you'll always remember, the first athlete that you get to a Paralympic game. So that will be always with me. Tamsin going down in the history books as the youngest ever, Australian track and field Paralympian to compete as well. There, other highlights, along with, state and national sort of medal winners. But it's not just the major events. It's the example that I just mentioned before, where the small little 1% goals that a lot of people don't see, them working so hard behind the scenes, how hard it was for them to get in a set of starting blocks, or pick up that 4 kilo shot put because they had to due to their age, and they're only not a shot putter's frame by any chance. So it's all different sort of goals. The international ones obviously are amazing, but there's other ones as well that are as important to me, and one of the main reasons why I continue to coach.
And Matt, do you have any particular coaching philosophies? Is there anything that you really anchor your coaching into? Anything you really believe when it comes to coaching?
Communication is 150%, where it's just like a minimum expectation that I need all my athletes to be communicating 150%, because if we're all not communicating, we're all not going to get the desired results. So it's just it's just more just about communicating and just understanding the athlete on and off the track as well. I'm not just a coach that wants to know them on the track. I'm big to encourage their schooling and life after athletics as well, because I know firsthand how quickly your dreams of succeeding or making athletics into a career sport can be taken away. So I'm one that's big for making sure that the athlete's education is sorted as well, because you're only one small car accident or a torn hamstring or anything away from being in a dark space and not being able to fulfill those goals. So it's always having a backup plan.
A backup plan. And
Yeah.
and Matt, you mentioned that when you first you started as a young coach, and you were very early on in the para coaching scene.
Yes.
Where did you learn? How did you learn what to become a coach and to become a coach of para athletes?
There's a lot of coaches that it goes back to communicating. I'll be the first to just put my hand up, and I'd go to, it all started with Brett Jones, who was the former Australian para sprints and jumps coach. He pretty much took me under his wing, and taught me a lot that I'm still using thus far, and I'm still in communication with him, even though he's in a different state. He's in Queensland. So he took me under his wing. A lot of philosophies that I used to learn as a coach, as an athlete through Malcolm Lavender. I'm very fortunate enough that that my dad, he's sort of like my right hand man. He's down at the track with me pretty much all the time. Not at the moment. He's a little bit high risk due to the circumstances that we've got going at the moment. So the athletes haven't sort of seen him for multiple months now. But there are a couple that initially really helped me, learn and develop. And I had to at a quick rate. And then as it sort of continued on, there were other coaches that have really been open to me coming and sort of picking their brains or bringing some of my high performance athletes to their squads, like Nicole Bogman sort of helped with long jump with me. Mike Hurst is another one that's really helped with some of my track guys. Penny Gillies as well. So these are all coaches that have been around at the highest level, and they have a wealth of experience, and they were very, very open and welcoming to helping me as a up and coming coach to learn and develop. And and I could also help them with, explaining why a particular para athlete couldn't understand that cue for whatever reason. So we're able to help each other a little bit, but I probably got more out of that due to all their extensive experiences as former elite athletes / coaches themselves. So there's been half a dozen people that have really helped me thus far in my coaching career. And quite a few of them I still keep in contact with as well, and their doors are always open, which is wonderful, and that's something that I'd like to continue for any sort of up and coming sort of para coaches to continue that legacy that sort of continues on.
Now, Matt, we actually, a few people joining us live tonight, and people were able to ask questions in advance of the session. So I might go to some of those now. Now, one of your athletes, we mentioned her before, Stephanie, you've been coaching for, 14 years or something like that, or some length. Yeah,
it's been a few years. It's been a good ride. There's been plenty of ups and downs, but she's a lovely young lady, and just watching her develop from a 13-year-old now to however old she is now, 14 years later, it's just been a wonderful journey and opportunity to sort of, watch athletes at a young age and watch them get to, the elite.
And how, whether it's someone like Stephanie who you've coached over such a long time, or whether it's someone, who you've only, starting to coach, and you might have referred to this a little bit when you talked about communication, but how do you motivate your athletes, Matt? How do you keep them involved in the sport? When they're through the teenage years or whatever, and there's other things. How do you find what strategies do you use to motivate your athletes as their coach?
I see him as a friend also. So as I said, I try to, we have team barbecues or Christmas parties and stuff like that as well. So we get to know each other outside of athletics, and what their likes and their dislikes are outside. So we can talk about that and communicate that, so you get to understand the athletes on and off the track, which then I guess over periods of times gives you some different sort of, just by looking at their body language, they might be turning up to training and go, oh, they haven't had a good day at school, because you've been able to understand the way that their left eyebrow looks at you when they're walking down to the track, or their right leg's dragging, as they're coming down. So you can sort of you know, get that ready from the beginning and go, oh, didn't have a good day today. And then all of a sudden they'll be like, how do you know? And then that automatically just sort of just drops their guard, and then you're able to sort of get on with the job. And they've all got my numbers. They all know, 24/7 they can call me. So, a lot of them see me as like a big brother or an older dad or something like that as well. So it's just trying to have that rapport with them off the track as well. So is, a few things that I've think that has worked quite well with getting and keeping motivating them on the track, and, even going to a lot of their physio appointments or their doctor's appointments as well. So we're all on the same page and we're communicating, because if we're not communicating, my mind reader's broken. So as I keep saying to them, so if they don't communicate and they tell me, then I don't understand what they're thinking or how they're feeling. So, if they tell me that, then we can work through whatever problem that they've got, whether it be motivation or, as some of the young athletes are going through adolescence, it could be, boyfriend's done something, girlfriend's done something, mum's done something. We can work through that at the start of the training session, so that we can get the job done on the training, and then we can debrief about that at the end if we need be as well.
So the takeaway there is, get to know your athletes both on and off the track. I suppose, Matt, you'd promote there. I suppose
I'm one big for that, and even when we meet up multiple times a week, I might just do a particular training session on a weekend as an example and say, okay, guys, let's have a campfire. So not actually a fire, but we sort of sit around in a circle, social distancing, of course, at this stage, and sort of say, how's your week been? Before we've even started training, and anything you want to share. How did you go at school this week? I hear you had an exam. How did that go? Oh, geez, what? You got ducks at the school. Would you like to share that with the rest of the squad? Just different examples like that, which I think just makes the whole squad a lot stronger as well, and becomes like a second family. So they don't really need motivation to come down, because they don't necessarily see athletics as a job, so to speak. It's a bit of fun time as well, which it has to be fun. If you're not enjoying your sport, then you're not going to succeed, and you're going to find it like a chore. If mum or dad asks you to clean your bedroom or whatever, you're going to sort of, I don't want to do that. It's the same with athletics. So there's a lot of philosophies there that you can use to sort of help.
That's some fantastic advice there, Matt. People were interested in actually a couple of questions about the training process too, Matt. So what do you focus on during your training sessions when it comes to out on the track? What do you think are your big sort of, the best bang for your buck sort of type items that you actually do out there? Whether it be, working on skills or, what, any advice on that?
Okay, so what gives the best bang for your buck in terms of athletic development? Was that the...
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that to me, the most pleasing thing, best bang for your buck, is when your athlete comes off the track and they've got smiles. Whether that's coming first or last, I think smiles doesn't necessarily mean that they've achieved the personal best. Or they tell you, I know that what you've been saying and I understand now, so I can't wait till next time. So they're just a few sort of things there. And from a training point of view, what do we tend to focus on in training outside of skill development? A lot of it's like race planning. In other words, how to run a race. So for an athlete that has an intellectual impairment, their processing skill development isn't as strong as an able-bodied person. So try to break different things down to the first, even 100 meters or 50 meters of each particular race. So you're just giving them small little cues. Or from long jumpers, you're allowed to have a check marker at a particular spot. So pushing out 3 steps, that could be you're working on the first 3 strides in your long jump, or where you want to be halfway through from a foot position or a body position, or even using some training drills like a hurdle in the middle of the sandpit, so they're not getting hunched down, they're looking up. And So they're just a few sort of, and also the conditions, a lot of athletes go, like today, they would have, try to pull the pin because it's raining. I say, well, you get wet in the shower so you can come to training. So,
Do you have any
so you
favourite?
can't
Sorry, go ahead.
you can't control the elements, so we might as well train in it. So if it's raining when you get to a World Championships or a Paralympic Games or a Com Games, what are you going to say? I don't want to I don't want to compete today because I'm not used to it. You're going to get out there, so you might as well do it and train, and when you get used to those conditions.
I'm going to remember that one, Matt. You get wet in the shower, so yeah.
Exactly. To me, it's a no-brainer. You go in the shower, you get wet, so you can be out in the track. It doesn't matter if it's raining.
Now, Matt, when it comes to coaching, do you have any particular favourite coaching cues for any of the particular events? Or can you give us advice on any coaching cues that you think work with athletes when they're performing whatever event it is?
Coaching cues. Whoa.
Just
There's so many.
language, I suppose, that you use, whether it be a long jumper or a sprinter or something. Any tips there?
Well, I guess it just comes back to understanding your athlete and communicating, because you might have 10 athletes that have the same classification, but their processing issues are all different. So you could say arm for one person, and they'll go, oh yeah, my arm's low, I need to drive that through. But you might have to use like a word orange or something like that, or stand up tall, which then might get their arm, the other person up with looking at that same cue. So it's more just understanding your athlete and just not being afraid to trial different things and looking outside the square. So an example of sort of like looking outside the square is Steph had a foot injury after one world champs, and we weren't able to do any long jumping, prior to a world champs, we weren't able to do any long jumping. So we actually did a lot of stuff on an exercise bike. So we just tried to modify our training and just try to do the load that we would be doing on the track, on the bike, to try to sort of keep her legs ticking over. So looking outside the square, also. So, but yeah, from a cues point of view, I think it just varies. For a para athlete, it's a little bit different to what you would do with an able-bodied athlete, due to different reasons: balance, coordination, vision impairment, intellectual impairment. So I think it's just understanding the athlete and not being afraid to try 400 things, because sometimes it takes 400 times or 10,000 times to get through that one cue, and just being patient, I think is another thing. I think a lot of people will say at my eulogy that I was a patient person. So and I think that's probably one of the reasons why I'm able to work so successfully with a lot of para athletes, because I see myself as a patient person, and it can be frustrating at times, and that's no difference to working with an able-bodied athlete. And I have a sprinkling of able-bodied athletes in my squad. Probably 95% are para athletes, but there are a sprinkling of able-bodies. But they actually always, sort of, they're really good as well. So the thing is just being patient and understanding. So from a cue point of view, it's more just understanding the athlete and not being afraid to trial different things.
Okay, so it's experimenting and not treating them as all the same. Is that basically yeah?
Correct, because they might be classified under the same umbrella or the same category. Like Tamsin, as an example, T36, but what works for her may not work for another T36 athlete, because they've all got different sort of functioning abilities.
Okay. Now, there was also a question, Matt, about how do you manage your athletes' training loads, and do you need to do anything in particular with the athletes that you coach regarding training loads, managing their training loads?
Yeah, each athlete's different. Some cope with a lot of racing, some perform with less racing. As you work together and communicate, this becomes a lot more evident. Then you design their program that suits. And well, I'm going to go back and say communication. So I we do a monthly plan. I have obviously a big full season, but I adjust as we need, and I send out an email probably halfway through the month beforehand, and I ask for all their commitments, and that could be going to a birthday party at their friends, dentist appointments, school exams, all that, and they're the first things that I put into the program, and then I try to tailor the program around that, because there's other things that they enjoy in their life as well. So I think that's sort of how that works with managing their load, and then understanding the athlete. Then you can, so sometimes usually the first 12 months is sometimes just a little bit of hit and miss with an athlete, due to various reasons, and then we can sort of hit the ground running. But the more the athlete communicates with me, that 12 months could be 3 months, as an example. But I put all that into a monthly program, and each athlete gets a monthly program, and it has, what time for those that are at school, what time they're at school, what I want them to do of a morning, an afternoon, doctor's appointments, and then I, try to figure out how long it takes them to get home. So whether it's actually practical, I put study sessions in there as well. So that's also helping, and mums and dads really like that as well when I put that in there, because then that takes a little bit of pressure off them of saying, do your homework. They can just say, what's on your program that Matt said? And then when it says study, then mums and dads go, well, you can't blame me. So because Matt's got it, so you can take it up with him. So I sort of play a little bit of a coach hat and a parent hat at the same time. So
there's some very strong
and
themes coming through there about
yeah,
communication and getting to know your athletes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if there's any athletes that have injuries, I try as much as practical to, if I can't make it to the physio or the sports doctor's appointment, to speak to them after that, and so we're all on the same page, which then will manage that load to get them back to the levels that they want to do.
Matt, we've just got a couple more questions. Now you've coached, you've had success with a number of athletes right up to Paralympic level. Do you see any particular traits in those athletes? Any characteristics, anything in their character that might be common, or again, are they all different? But is there something that is in athletes that make it to the top that you've seen?
Yeah, like Stephanie, Kaylin, who's competed at Com Games, and Tamsin, they just never miss a training session. They're just hard work, dedication. They're living and breathing the sport. 9 times out of 10, I've got to actually, pull them back, because they're always, well, what? We're only doing 10 reps today. I want to do 11. Well, no, just steady on. They're always trying to do extras, and they're always quizzing me at training. Why are we doing this? Are always asking questions. So they want to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, how many reps we're doing it. So they then that way they buy into the program, and they have the faith and trust in me. And it just goes back to communication as well. I'm happy for them to ask me 400 questions at a training session. That doesn't bother me. Hopefully I have 400 answers. Sometimes I'm like, oh, geez, that's a good one. But but hard work and dedication. You can just see when they come down. There's some athletes that might be dragging their feet when they come down. I've never seen it with any of those three athletes. And there's plenty of other athletes that I have coached that are at that high performance level as well. But I don't want to single out everybody, because I know everybody's got we're under not necessarily time constraints, but I could continue and I could give you an example on each athlete that I've come in contact with. But I just thought I'd just use those three as just a bit of an example.
Coaches just starting out, Matt, do you have a number one tip for any coaches who are just starting out?
Number one tip: patience, understanding. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Pick up the phone. Give me a call if you need be. I just think that I believe that as a coach, you've got to listen. you got to listen to the athletes. Yeah, I keep harping on that. In other words, communication is a key factor. You know, if the athlete will enjoy what they're doing and they'll want to give the best if you're communicating. So always, don't be afraid to think outside the square. Ask for help if you're not sure, or if you've got or if you've got a block. That's something that I've done multiple times, through my coaching career. I haven't been afraid to go to another coach and say, "Hey, can you have a look at my athlete? I'm really having a block at the moment. I just don't know what to do." And most of the coaches that I've come in contact with, no dramas. If they can't actually get to the particular session, or if you can't get your athlete to their session, they might just say, "Send me a video and I'll tell you what I think, and try that and see how that works." So, yeah, don't be afraid. You'll get the odd athlete that'll leave you and go to that coach, but that's life. I've had it happen before. I'm sure it'll happen again, but I don't hold any gripes. At the end of the day, I just want the athlete to be happy, and and if they want to leave, they leave. But touch wood, I've been pretty good with a lot of my athletes. They've been happy with the product that I've been delivering, and hopefully they continue to do so for many more years to come. So,
So Matt, what do you see? What's coming up next for you in coaching, or what do you see coming up? What do you hope is coming up? What's next?
I'd like to have a few athletes on the plane to Tokyo. A few of those athletes we've mentioned tonight. So I'll be working very hard to do everything that I can to get them on the plane to Tokyo. I'll still continue to be involved with Athletics New South Wales, for any other coach to sort of come and pull me aside at a Saturday inner club. Working with the TTP. We had our first TTP session today in the pouring rain. We had athletes come from, and their parents come from, Gundagai, Bathurst, South Nowra, Newcastle, all in the pouring rain, and originally for me just to run their eye over their particular athletes, and we just start working together. It's a great opportunity, the TTP product that we've got, and athletes can learn a lot from not only the education, but we can continue that growth and development, especially out in the rural areas, and some of those coaches will be able to grow their squads and hopefully gain a little bit of knowledge and insight from myself, and vice versa. There's probably a few things from some of those coaches that are been coaching for many years that I might be able to learn a few things from as well. So continue just helping out the para athletes across New South Wales, and that's not just senior athletics, that goes down to little athletics as well, and then helping athletes get to their goals. It could just be simply I want to make the final of the school athletics carnival. It doesn't have to be making Tokyo, but I see myself as somebody that's happy to help at grassroots, and if it takes you up to an international level, of course I'm going to go along for the ride, and we're going to enjoy it together. So as long as we're communicating. So
Matt, absolutely brilliant. There's been some very, very strong takeaways from this session. So thanks for sharing all those with us. It's been wonderful that you're being so generous with all that, and we really appreciate your time. It's been brilliant having you on Sunday Coaching School, and we really appreciate that, Matt.
No, that's fine. And I think I didn't touch on it before, but just one of the the big sort of things I've got is if I can help and provide 1% of happiness or achievement in any of my athletes, not necessarily a para athlete or an able-bodied athlete, then I believe I've done my job as a coach. And that's sort of one of my coaching philosophies. And I know we spoke about that before, and that was probably a perfect opportunity when you asked the question, but I just if I can provide 1% of happiness or achievement in an athlete's life, then that's all the thanks that I need, or one of my coaching philosophies.
Thanks, Matt. We really appreciate your time.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.